Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging headfirst into a topic that I think resonates deeply with so many of us right now, navigating this really rapidly changing world. It's the quest for spirituality, but often a kind that stretches, far beyond the familiar boundaries of traditional religion.
Mm.
It's a truly fascinating landscape, isn't it? Where you see ancient wisdom traditions meeting cutting-edge modern inquiry, and where personal experience often seems to take precedence over, well, prescribed dogma.
It really does. It feels like a major shift happening for a lot of people.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to unpack this rich, incredibly diverse collection of insights we've pulled from, well, timeless mystical texts, contemporary philosophical inquiries, even personal accounts, all exploring what it truly means to find meaning, purpose, and connection when those old maps maybe no longer quite fit the territory of our lives.
Yeah, the old maps feel a bit worn out for
Yeah.
some.
Exactly. Think of this deep dive as your personal shortcut, if you will, to being genuinely well-informed about the future of faith, or maybe more accurately, the evolving nature of personal spirituality itself.
And that's precisely what we'll try to do. We'll be meticulously extracting the most important nuggets of knowledge and, honestly, some genuinely surprising facts from these sources. Our goal isn't just to summarize, though. It's really to help you, our listener, understand what's truly significant in these often profound tests. We want to give you memorable details, examples that spark those invaluable aha
Those
moments.
aha moments are key, aren't they?
Totally. And hopefully, without ever overwhelming you with, information overload,
Yeah.
we're here to guide you through different perspectives on inner exploration, the very nature of consciousness, and ultimately how to cultivate a more authentic, deeply interconnected life. So with that, let's truly unpack this.
Absolutely. Let's begin by maybe charting this expansive and, let's face it, sometimes nebulous terrain. What does it actually mean to seek cleaning beyond dogma? It certainly feels like a growing number of individuals are yearning for profound spiritual experiences, a deeper sense of personal meaning, but they're increasingly looking for this outside the confines of established religious institutions or their specific doctrines.
Mhm.
What does this evolving spiritual landscape truly entail? And, how do we even begin to define it?
It's a critical question, really.
Yeah.
And what's particularly striking here is that observable shift you mentioned. We seem to be moving away from a reliance on, let's say, prescribed beliefs and inherited traditions towards a greater emphasis on direct personal experience and inner cultivation.
Right. Less being told, more finding out for yourself.
It's exactly. Consider the insights of someone like Sam Harris, particularly in his work, Waking Up, A Guide to Spirituality Without Religion. Harris comes from a distinctly secular viewpoint, right? No traditional religious framework there. And he proposes a path he explicitly calls spirituality without religion. But it's important to note, this isn't about fostering apathy or disengagement with the world. Quite the opposite, actually.
Okay.
He introduces the practice of mindfulness, not as, just a relaxation technique, but as something much deeper. An appropriate response, he calls it, to the truth of dukkha.
Dukkha. Now, that's a term we hear a lot, often translated simply as suffering. But Harris offers a more nuanced interpretation, doesn't he? He digs a bit deeper than just pain.
He really does, and it's a vital distinction he makes. Harris suggests dukkha is better understood not necessarily as outright acute suffering, like, tragedy or intense physical pain,
Mm.
but as a more pervasive underlying sense of unsatisfactoriness, or maybe disease captures it well, something that just permeates much of human experience.
Unsatisfactoriness, like a subtle background noise.
Kind of. It's not that life is entirely pain, but there's this inherent quality of not quite enoughness or subtle not quite rightness to things, a pervasive sense of wanting things to be other than they are, even when things are objectively okay.
So it's less about the big, obvious tragedies and more about that underlying hum of discomfort, that feeling that even when things are good, they're fleeting, or maybe there's something still missing somehow.
Precisely. Harris articulates it so powerfully. He says, and I'm paraphrasing slightly here, suffering may not be inherent in life, but unsatisfactoriness is. He argues that we are fundamentally wired, to crave lasting happiness and stability, yet we exist in a universe defined by constant change. Impermanence is the rule,
Yeah, nothing stays the same.
right? Our bodies inevitably age, cherished objects break or get lost, intense pleasures fade, even our most beloved relationships can shift, evolve, or sadly fail. It's just the nature of things. And our attachment, our clinging to the fleeting good things in life, and our equally strong aversion, our pushing away of the bad things, it basically amounts to a fundamental denial of these undeniable realities of impermanence.
We fight against the way things are.
Exactly. And this denial, this fight, Harris concludes, inevitably leads to that persistent underlying feeling of dissatisfaction, dukkha.
Okay, and here's where Harris's approach gets really interesting for a lot of people, I think. Mindfulness, then, isn't just about sitting quietly and zoning out. It's about cultivating equanimity amid the flux, as he so aptly puts it. It's about developing an inner stability, a kind of inner balance, that allows you to be genuinely at peace with the present moment, embracing its ever-changing nature, even while you are simultaneously and actively working to improve the world around you. It's not passive acceptance in the sense of giving up.
Not at all. It's an engaged peace.
Right.
This approach fundamentally acknowledges that this inherent dissatisfaction is a deeply human condition, not some kind of personal failing, and that mindfulness provides a direct, almost empirical way to navigate this. It helps foster an inner peace that isn't dependent on external circumstances always being perfect or on adhering to specific creeds or beliefs.
And that specific framing, I think, offers a significant sense of agency and autonomy in one's own spiritual journey. It really resonates deeply with those who might feel alienated by, say, the rigid doctrines or the hierarchical structures you find in some traditional religions.
Makes sense.
It transforms the spiritual pursuit from a search for external validation or prescribed belief into an internal pursuit of truth. Through introspection, through empirical observation of one's own mind, it really prioritizes direct experience over received wisdom or dogma, which seems to be a real hallmark of this evolving spiritual landscape we're talking about. It's a profound shift, isn't it? Moving from being told what to believe to actively exploring and observing reality within yourself. And Harris is quite direct in his challenge here. I recall that quote. Suffering may not be inherent in life, but unsatisfactoriness is. We crave lasting happiness in the midst of change. Our bodies age, cherished objects break, pleasures fade, relationships fail. Our attachment to the good things in life and our aversion to the bad amount to a denial of these realities, and this inevitably leads to feelings of dissatisfaction. It's not just an abstract philosophy, is it? It feels like a very practical invitation to recognize and engage with a fundamental truth about human experience, empowering us to respond differently, maybe more wisely.
And this foundational understanding of dissatisfaction, of dukkha, then naturally leads us to the next critical question, doesn't it? If traditional religious frameworks aren't the primary path for everyone anymore, then how are people today connecting with deeper realities or, a sense of the divine or just something bigger than themselves?
Right. What are the alternatives?
And what we find when we look across various traditions and also contemporary personal accounts are incredibly varied approaches. But they all powerfully underscore humanity's enduring and, I'd say, universal drive to transcend the mundane and reach for something more.
That's fascinating. So if we're indeed stepping away from those old familiar maps, what new or perhaps actually very, very old paths are individuals taking to find this unseen or this deeper reality? It's clear the yearning hasn't just disappeared, maybe just the preferred routes are changing.
Precisely. The impulse is still there. And if we connect this to the broader spectrum of human experience, many contemplative traditions offer incredibly profound avenues. For instance, think about the ancient Indian wisdom traditions. The Upanishads, for example, speak eloquently of the supreme place of Brahman, the ultimate reality, and they famously articulate this core principle, that the self, the true self or Atman, cannot be won by speaking, nor by intelligence or much learning.
So not by intellectual effort alone.
Not primarily. They say it can be won by the one whom it chooses. To him, the self reveals its own form. It's fascinating phrasing, isn't it? It emphasizes a direct, often non-conceptual, and ultimately self-revealing realization.
Wow.
It's deeply mystical insight, suggesting that ultimate truth isn't something you acquire, like knowledge, but something that is revealed when the conditions are right, maybe when the ego gets out of the way.
That's a huge departure from the idea that you can just learn your way to spirituality through academic study or listening to sermons. It suggests an almost mystical intimacy, a kind of grace or recognition that happens from within, rather than something achieved through external effort alone.
Indeed. And building on that, the Bhagavad Gita further elaborates on a whole range of what it calls yoga. And we're not just talking about the physical postures many are familiar with today, but comprehensive spiritual disciplines. It details various forms, like karma yoga, which is the path of selfless action, doing your duty without attachment to the results. Then there's jnana yoga, the path of knowledge and deep intellectual inquiry into the nature of reality, and Hatha Yoga, which does involve physical postures and breath work, but as a means to discipline the mind and body. All of these the Gita presents as stepping stones to what it considers the culmination, devotional perfection in Bhakti Yoga.
Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion.
Exactly. The path of deep, personal devotion and love for the divine, however one conceives of it. And this devotional path, the Bhagavad Gita explains, ultimately leads to transcendental knowledge, which it describes beautifully as the mature fruit of all mysticism.
The mature fruit. I like that.
So while there are different practices, different emphasis, they're all presented as leading towards a singular, profound outcome, with bhakti, this deep love and surrender, often considered the ultimate, most direct expression of spiritual connection in that tradition.
Okay, so from these ancient Eastern traditions, we see paths of deep introspection, selfless action, disciplined practice, leading towards self-realization and devotion. But what about traditions from the West? They also speak of profound inner journeys, right? Albeit sometimes through a very different, maybe even more agonizing lens.
Absolutely, which leads us quite naturally to the intensely personal and often painful journey described by the Spanish mystic St. John of the Cross in his seminal work, Dark Night of the Soul.
The dark night. That sounds intense.
It is. He speaks of these harrowing dark nights of the spirit, which he characterizes as a process of spiritual purgation or dark contemplation. It's not a pleasant walk in the park.
Purgation, like a cleansing.
A very deep, sometimes painful cleansing. St. John describes this process quite vividly, quite starkly. He explains that during these dark nights, God, in his view, actively leads souls from what he calls ignoble love.
Ignoble love. What does that mean?
He means love that is self-serving, maybe based on spiritual consolations or feelings, attachment-based, or impure in some way towards a higher degree of love, a pure, more selfless love. And this involves a profound stripping away of all attachments, both spiritual-like attachment to visions or good feelings in prayer and material, to the point where the soul feels itself to be perishing and melting away, utter desolation sometimes.
Wow, perishing and melting away. That sounds terrifying.
It does. But for St. John, this intense, profound darkness is precisely what is meant to make the soul divine. It's a rigorous, often agonizing process of purification and desolation, designed to alienate the soul from its ordinary experience, its reliance on anything external, even spiritual comforts. The aim is to bring it into an absolute, unmediated closeness with the divine. It's like the ultimate crucible for spiritual transformation in his understanding.
What a powerful, almost frightening testament to the transformative potential of, well, of deep suffering or purification. The contrast is really striking, isn't it? On one hand, you have the structured, often devotional paths of yoga, and on the other, this profound, challenging inner purification of St. John, where the soul feels utterly desolate, stripped bare.
Different paths, different experiences.
And then, quite distinct from both of these, we have approaches that involve, let's say, external aids, like direct experience through psychedelics, which figures like Ram Dass explored quite openly. He, for instance, spoke about his psychedelic projects involving substances like psilocybin, LSD, DMT, which he found could lead to incredibly powerful inner experiences and expanded states of consciousness. A very different route.
Yes, a very different route indeed. And Sam Harris, who we started with, also touches upon this in Waking Up. He notes, quite interestingly, that positing the existence of a mind at large is more tempting in some states of consciousness than in others.
Yeah, I can imagine.
He openly acknowledges the potential for profound insight, even a sense of cosmic unity or interconnectedness that can arise from these experiences. However, and this is crucial, he also injects a significant note of caution.
Okay, what's the warning?
He warns that these same experiences, while potentially insightful for some, can also lead to psychosis for others, or become what he calls an excruciating detour on the path to sublimity. He doesn't mince words. He even recounts a terrifying personal experience he had, traveling, as he puts it, beyond all metaphors, to the mountain of shame for what felt like 1,000 years.
1,000 years on the mountain of shame. Yikes.
Exactly. It vividly highlights the double-edged nature of such exploration. There's potential for profound insight, maybe, but it coexists with very real risks and potentially quite destructive outcomes. It's not a simple path.
That's a very, very important distinction to make. The experience itself might be incredibly profound or overwhelming or even terrifying. But drawing grand cosmological or philosophical conclusions solely based on chemically induced states seems inherently risky, potentially misleading.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's not presented as a guaranteed shortcut to enlightenment, and as Harris points out, it could be actively harmful for some individuals, not a path to be taken lightly.
Definitely not.
And then, in yet another vein entirely, a completely different approach, we have figures like Henry David Thoreau. He found a different but equally profound path through deep connection with the natural world.
Ah, Walden Pond.
Precisely. In his iconic work, Walden, or Life in the Woods, he meticulously details his experiment in simple living. But it wasn't just about, physically being in nature. It was about truly observing it, immersing himself so deeply that he found inexhaustible entertainment and a palpable sense of kindredship in nature.
He really paid attention.
Deep attention. He perceived the globe continually transcends and translates itself, finding spiritual significance in the most ordinary phenomena, the loons on the pond, the melting ice, the bean field. He even goes so far as to describe the soul of bread as spiritus, suggesting a spiritual essence, a hidden divinity, even in the simplest, most mundane things, finding the sacred in the ordinary.
So, okay, whether it's the disciplined meditation and devotion of yogis, the rigorous and often painful inner purification of Christian mystics like St. John, the potentially intense and sometimes perilous journey with psychedelics, or the quiet, profound immersion in and observation of nature like Thoreau, these diverse approaches all powerfully highlight humanity's enduring drive to transcend the mundane, to touch something larger than itself. What stands out here, for me anyway, is that the methods might be vastly different, the languages, the traditions seemingly disparate, but the underlying human yearning for something more, something beyond just everyday material reality, that remains a constant across all these varied expressions.
That really seems to be the case,
Yeah.
which then raises an important overarching question for us, doesn't it? What is the true relationship between these seemingly disparate paths? Are they all, climbing the same mountain just from radically different starting points using different gear? Or do they perhaps reveal different facets of a multifaceted reality, like looking at the same gem through different colored lenses?
That's a great way to put it. Same summit, different trails, or different gems altogether.
Right. But the overarching common thread, despite their surface differences, seems to be this emphasis on inner work, on direct, often non-conceptual experience, regardless of whether it's achieved through disciplined contemplation or maybe chemical assistance or profound immersion in the natural world. It points to a deeper human capacity for transcendental experience, however we get there.
That's a powerful and unifying thought, and it leads us perfectly into our next section, actually, because a central theme woven through all of these, let's call them non-traditional or evolving spiritual paths, is a radical reevaluation of who or what we truly are. It's about moving far beyond the limited ego-identified self that we typically assume to be our entire identity. This shifting perception of consciousness and the self seems to be a real foundational cornerstone for many of these evolving spiritual understandings.
Indeed. And this challenges that deeply ingrained belief in the separate, isolated self, a belief which, arguably, is often a source of immense suffering and conflict. Michael A. Singer, in his incredibly impactful book, The Untethered Soul, The Journey Beyond Yourself, offers a profound perspective here. He argues that to achieve true inner freedom, real liberation, one must learn to objectively watch your problems instead of being lost in them.
Watch your problems like an observer.
Exactly. The real problem, he contends, isn't typically the external circumstances themselves. It's what he metaphorically calls an inner roommate within our own psyche.
Ah, the inner roommate. I think anyone listening can immediately relate to that relentless internal voice, that critic, that worrier.
That's the one. Often critical, always judging. The voice that, as Singer puts it, can have a problem with almost anything. Doesn't matter how good things are, it'll find something.
Huh. Too true. So the solution, according to Singer, is to go inside and let go of the part of you that seems to have so many problems with reality. Stop identifying with that voice.
Precisely. He suggests that this practice of letting go, of observing rather than identifying with the stream of thoughts and emotions, leads to this profound question. Who am I that notices this? Who is the awareness behind the thoughts?
Okay. And the answer?
The answer, he suggests, points to something beyond the thinking mind, beyond the personality. It points to an experiencer, a fundamental presence with the quality of awareness, consciousness, and intuitive sense of existence. From this vantage point, he offers a truly radical perspective. He says, you're not even a human being. You just happen to be watching one.
Wow. Okay, unpack that. Watching a human being.
It suggests that your fundamental identity isn't the body-mind complex, the person with the name and the history. Your fundamental identity is the awareness in which that human experience is unfolding. He claims this consciousness itself is tremendously expansive, inherently vast, only appearing small and limited because we are habitually focusing it on small unlimited objects like our thoughts, our emotions, our physical sensations, our problems.
So we shrink our awareness down by focusing on the small stuff?
That's the idea. And Singer claims this very insight. The recognition of this vast, aware space is the fundamental message found across traditions, from Christ, Buddha, and the great saints and sages of all time, identifying the witness, the awareness itself.
That's a radical and incredibly liberating idea, isn't it? That our everyday, ego-identified self, the one constantly judging, planning, worrying, the inner roommate, is not our true self, but merely something we're observing from a deeper, vaster place of awareness. It truly challenges our most fundamental sense of identity and personal experience. And this also seems to tie into what Sam Harris describes as the hard problem of consciousness, doesn't it?
It does connect, absolutely. Harris, coming from neuroscience and philosophy, highlights consciousness not just as a brain function, but as the sheer fact that this universe is illuminated by sentience, the subjective quality of experience. He points to a fundamental explanatory gap, a deep puzzle in science and philosophy, in understanding how consciousness, subjective awareness, feeling, seeing red, emerges from seemingly unconscious physical processes, like neurons firing. That's the hard problem of consciousness.
The mystery of subjective experience.
Exactly. Why isn't it all just dark inside? Why is there something it is like to be us? This suggests a mystery that cannot be fully accounted for by purely physical descriptions alone, at least not with our current understanding.
And it suggests that consciousness isn't simply a byproduct of the brain, a mere epiphenomenon, but maybe something more fundamental, existing on its own terms, perhaps, or at least operating at a level beyond our current scientific grasp.
That's certainly one interpretation many draw from the hard problem, and Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now echoes this idea of a deeper, perhaps non-physical reality to our being. He invites us to a direct experience of it. He encourages us to direct your attention into the body, feel it from within. Not just thinking about the body, but feeling the life in it. He speaks of sensing the subtle energy field that pervades the entire body.
The inner body, he calls it sometimes, right?
Yes, the inner body. He emphasizes that this isn't just a metaphor. It can, he claims, be felt simultaneously in all parts of the body as a single field of energy, suggesting a deeper energetic reality to our physical form, beyond just the dense material body or scattered physical sensations. It's an invitation to perceive the aliveness within.
A sense of a vibrant, living energy field animating us, rather than just seeing ourselves as a collection of organs and cells. Interesting. And then Neil Donald Walsh, in his Conversations with God series, takes this idea of unity and multiplicity even further with what he calls the divine dichotomy.
Yeah.
It sounds intriguing. Divine dichotomy.
It's a concept that really stretches our conventional understanding of God and self. Walsh posits that while at the highest level there is only one being, and hence only one soul, a fundamental absolute unity. Simultaneously, there are many souls in the one being.
Okay, wait. One soul, but many souls. How does that work?
He explains that this one soul feels like a bunch of individual souls by design. It's a design multiplicity within ultimate unity.
Can you give an analogy, maybe?
Sure. Imagine a vast, singular ocean. That's the one being. Yet that ocean manifests as countless individual waves, right? Each wave has its own unique form, movement, duration, experience, even though they are all undeniably part of the same ocean, made of the same water.
Okay, that helps. We're like the waves.
Walsh suggests something similar. We are both distinct waves, with our individual experiences, and simultaneously part of the boundless, singular ocean of existence, the one soul. It's a conceptual framework trying to reconcile our everyday experience of individuality with the deeper mystical intuition of underlying oneness.
This whole collection of ideas, then, from Singer's watcher or awareness to Harris's hard problem, Tully's subtle energy body, and Walsh's divine dichotomy, it profoundly challenges that deeply ingrained belief in a separate, isolated self. That ego self that often feels so limited and vulnerable.
It really does cut to the core of our assumed identity.
It prompts you listening, to consider consciousness not just as a brain function, but maybe as a more fundamental, pervasive aspect of reality, something we can directly experience and perhaps even expand beyond our current perceived limits. Which brings up such an intriguing question for you, the listener. What if our everyday experience of having a small, limited self is largely an illusion? Or at least not the whole story. What if our true nature is actually vast, interconnected, and fundamentally aware?
How would that change things?
Exactly. How would embracing such a perspective radically change your perception of reality and your place within it? It also raises that deep question again. Do physical processes simply correlate with consciousness, or do they actively produce it? The jury is still very much out on that one. As Singer says, and it's worth repeating, you will find that you are tremendously expansive. When you start to explore consciousness instead of form, you realize that your consciousness only appears to be small and limited because you are focusing on small and limited objects. It's a powerful invitation, isn't it, to consciously shift our focus and expand our awareness.
And that leads us beautifully into the practical dimension of this deep dive, because it's one thing to talk about these expansive ideas, right? But to truly realize this expansive self, to liberate ourselves from the kind of suffering rooted in dissatisfaction and ego identification. Various profound practices are recommended and elaborated upon across these diverse texts. This is where the rubber truly meets the road. How do we actually engage in this inner work and embody these insights in our daily lives?
Yes, exactly. It's not enough to just intellectually grasp these concepts, is it? That feels like only the first step. We need tangible tools, methods, practices for genuine inner transformation. What are some of the key approaches that these sources suggest for achieving this inner liberation and cultivating this vaster sense of self?
Well, what's truly striking, I think, is the consistency across these different traditions and authors, despite their varied language. The common thread seems to be about dissolving inner blockages, inner resistance, letting go of the inner fight. Tara Brach, for instance, who's a prominent voice in contemporary mindfulness, particularly in her book Radical Acceptance, emphasizes precisely this. She highlights the profound importance of mindfulness, yes, but specifically coupled with radical acceptance.
Radical acceptance. Acceptance of what?
Acceptance of all inner experiences, even the most painful, difficult, or uncomfortable ones: fear, anger, sadness, shame. This involves a conscious choice, she suggests, to soften any reaction against the bane, allowing the fist of resistance to unclench and open.
Unclench the fist. I like that image.
Yeah. She suggests that the more you connect with this open and spacious awareness, the awareness we were just talking about, the more you'll be able to be truly present with difficult sensations and emotions, allowing them to unfold and pass naturally without getting trapped by your reaction to them. It's about meeting your inner world with a gentle yet firm presence.
So instead of fighting against difficult emotions or sensations or trying to suppress them or distract yourself, you learn to meet them with an open, soft awareness, allowing them to move through you like clouds passing through the sky.
Beautifully put. And Eckhart Tolle reinforces this exact sentiment powerfully in The Power of Now. He states that to surrender each moment to the reality of that moment, whatever it contains, creates a state of non-resistance. And this non-resistance, he says, is a state of grace and lightness, free of struggle.
Free of struggle. That sounds appealing.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
And he states with striking clarity that your resistance is what creates suffering. Not the situation itself necessarily, but our inner fight against it. It's an incredibly direct and powerful insight that really cuts to the core of much human discomfort.
Our resistance is the problem. Wow. So Tolle's point is that the suffering isn't inherent in the event itself, but in our internal fight against what is.
That's the core message. Then you have someone like Deepak Chopra in The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, who introduces the concept of stillness. He calls stillness the first requirement for manifesting your desires.
Stillness for manifesting? How does that work?
He explains that this inner stillness provides a direct connection to what he calls a field of pure potentiality, the unmanifest source of all creation, the space from which possibilities arise. And he suggests this state is primarily achieved through the practice of meditation, quieting the restless, chattering mind to access deeper wisdom and potential.
And non-judgment is also absolutely key for Chopra, isn't it? I remember reading that. He argues that our constant evaluation of things as right or wrong, good or bad, acceptable or unacceptable, that creates turbulence in your internal dialogue.
Exactly. That inner critic, again, the inner roommate Singer talks about, is creating a lot of this internal static, this turbulence.
Right.
And that relentless internal turbulence, Chopra argues, constricts energy flow.
Right.
It squeezes and obscures what he calls the gap, that quiet space between thoughts. And he identifies that gap as our direct connection to true power and universal intelligence.
The space between thoughts.
Yes. So cultivating a calm, non-judgmental mind through practices like meditation is essential in his view for connecting to this deeper, more expansive source within. It's about letting go of the internal noise to hear the deeper signal, the underlying silence.
That makes so much intuitive sense. We are constantly judging, evaluating, categorizing, aren't we? And it creates this internal cacophony that often cuts us off from our deeper wisdom and potential. Then Michael Singer, again from The Untethered Soul and the spiritual text A Course in Miracles, often called ISOM, both speak to the profound idea of healing through awareness and forgiveness, approaching it slightly differently, but the core message feels similar.
It does. Singer states quite directly, to feel great love and freedom, to find the presence of God within you, all of this stored pain must go. He's very clear about the need to release the past. He describes this inner work, the process of releasing accumulated psychological and emotional blockages, what he sometimes calls stored samskaras, as what truly makes spirituality a reality, not just a concept.
So dealing with our baggage is essential.
Crucial. He uses this powerful metaphor of a fortress. Our mental and emotional structures are defenses. We meticulously build this fortress, he says, to avoid feeling pain, but ultimately it ends up imprisoning us. To be free, he asserts, you must come out of this self-made prison of defensiveness.
Let down the drawbridge.
Precisely. ASEM, on the other hand, defines its concept of miracle-minded forgiveness, not as condoning wrongdoing or saying what happened was okay, but as only correction, a fundamental shift in perception without judgment. It's framed as an appeal to God or higher wisdom to heal their minds, meaning our own minds, our own misperceptions.
Healing perception, not changing the past.
Exactly. It's described as a dream of healing and forgiveness, suggesting that our perceptions of separation, grievance, attack, and victimhood are like illusions within a dream, which can be corrected through a radical shift in perspective, choosing love over fear. Both texts strongly emphasize the necessity of letting go of past burdens and perceived wrongs to find present freedom.
So these practices aren't just about, feeling a bit better temporarily. They seem aimed at achieving profound liberation from our self-imposed limitations and the heavy baggage of the past. Singer also places a very strong emphasis on the heart, doesn't he, as a center for this transformation.
Yes, very much so. For Singer, the heart is much more than just a physical organ pumping blood. It's the energetic center where energy flows to sustain you, where inspiration originates, where true inner upliftment occurs, the seat of feeling and connection. He suggests something quite remarkable. The highest state you have ever experienced, think about your moments of greatest joy, love, peace, is simply the result of how open you were in that moment,
Yeah.
how open your heart was.
Wow. So openness equals higher states.
That's the implication. And the truly profound part is his assertion that if you consciously choose not to close your heart, even when faced with difficulty or pain, this state of unending inspiration, unending love, and unending openness can become your constant lived reality. It highlights the heart not just as an emotional center, but as a dynamic spiritual gateway that we can learn to keep open.
These practices collectively point towards a common and incredibly powerful goal, then. Dissolving those inner blockages, that resistance, to allow a natural, unimpeded flow of life and experience. They emphasize that true freedom, true peace, comes not primarily from changing external circumstances, which are often beyond our control anyway,
Right.
but from fundamentally shifting our internal response to them, our relationship with them. Which raises a profound question for you, the listener, again. What if pain, discomfort, or suffering is not meant to be simply avoided or suppressed or even just stoically endured? What if it's actually meant to be transmuted through conscious engagement and acceptance? This suggests a profoundly different, even counterintuitive way of relating to discomfort and suffering, seeing them as active pathways to growth and deeper understanding rather than merely obstacles to get rid of.
It reframes the whole experience of difficulty.
Completely.
Yeah.
Singer uses a truly relatable example for this. He compares inner emotional thorns, those stored pains, those triggers, to having a physical thorn stuck in your arm. He says there's no reason to spend your life protecting the thorn from getting touched, building defenses around it when you can just remove it.
Makes sense.
And similarly, with inner emotional thorns, he advises that we must learn to relax and give it the space it needs to release and burn through you. It's an active yet surrendered process of allowing the stored energy, the pain, to finally release itself rather than constantly guarding it.
Letting it go, finally.
Yeah.
Which, this deep internal work, this reevaluation of self and consciousness, inevitably spills over into our external world, doesn't it? Particularly into our relationships. It has to. Which brings us to a crucial aspect of reimagining human experience. How these deeper understandings of self and consciousness fundamentally transform our interactions with others, moving us far beyond those typical egoic patterns of relating.
That's our next crucial segment. Relationships and love as spiritual practice. If our inner world is potentially this vast, interconnected space of awareness, how does that fundamentally alter the way we perceive and engage with other people? And what does it mean for our most intimate connections, our partnerships, our families, our communities?
Well, this perspective fundamentally redefines love and relationships, doesn't it? Shifting them from something primarily driven by attachment, neediness, and often self-serving desires towards something rooted in conscious choice, mutual spiritual support, and even unconditional acceptance. M. Scott Peck, in his groundbreaking book, The Road Less Traveled, offers a powerful and frankly often challenging definition of love. He emphasizes that genuine love is volitional rather than emotional.
Volitional, meaning based on will, on choice.
Exactly. It's not just a feeling that sweeps over you, although feelings are involved. It is, at its core, he argues, the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own and another's spiritual growth.
Nurturing spiritual growth, that's a very different goal than just happiness or security.
It is. Peck describes it as a committed, thoughtful decision to be loving, to act lovingly, whether or not that intense, warm, fuzzy, loving feeling is present in any given moment.
Wow. So that means showing up, choosing love, putting in the effort, even when it's difficult, or when the initial sparks of infatuation have inevitably faded. It's an action, a commitment.
It implies a deeply conscious choice and an ongoing, sustained commitment, moving far beyond mere infatuation, or what can sometimes be transactional affection. I'll love you if you meet my needs, that kind of thing.
Right. What can you do for me?
Peck moves beyond that. And Gary Zukav, in The Seat of the Soul, introduces an even more evolved concept, perhaps, with what he calls spiritual partnership.
Yeah.
He sees this as an emerging archetype.
Spiritual partnership. How is that different from, say, traditional marriage or partnership?
Zukav describes it as a partnership between equals for the purpose of spiritual growth. He explicitly differentiates it from the traditional archetype of marriage, which, he suggests, historically was often designed more to assist physical survival and societal stability, focusing on practical needs like procreation, pooling resources, security, social status.
Makes sense historically.
But this new form of relationship, this spiritual partnership, reflects a profound shift in understanding power. It moves from perceiving power as external, like having control over others or accumulating wealth or status, to internal alignment, where real power comes from within, from integrity, authenticity, conscious choice.
Aligning with your soul, maybe.
That's exactly Zukav's point. It's about two individuals coming together consciously, not just to build a shared life or ensure security, although those might happen, but primarily to support each other's soul, evolution, and growth, to consciously accelerate their individual spiritual journeys through mutual engagement, reflection, and challenge.
That's a high bar for a relationship, but potentially incredibly rewarding. And Eckhart Tolle, bringing it back to presence, again in The Power of Now, connects this to that powerful principle of acceptance, which seems especially vital in relationships.
Absolutely crucial. Tolle states that the greatest catalyst for change in a relationship is complete acceptance of your partner as he or she is, without needing to judge or change them in any way.
Complete acceptance. That sounds hard, especially when someone's annoying you.
Chuckle slightly. It is hard. It's probably one of the hardest practices. But this radical acceptance, Tolle explains, immediately takes you beyond ego. It stops the ego's endless project of trying to fix or control the other person to meet its own needs and preferences. It effectively ends, he says, the mind games and all addictive clinging that so often plague relationships and cause immense suffering.
The drama, the manipulation, the codependency.
All fueled by non-acceptance and egoic needs. This deep acceptance, Tolle suggests, allows for a relationship to either naturally and perhaps peacefully separate in love if it's genuinely no longer serving both parties' growth, or, more profoundly, it allows the partners to move ever more deeply into the now together into being. It dissolves the egoic projections, the expectations, the incessant judgments that are so often the root of conflict and suffering in human connections.
And On Courts and Miracles also speaks directly to this, doesn't it? With that concept of the holy instant, a moment completely free from the ego's distorted perceptions.
Yes, precisely. In a holy instant, Asim posits, no one is special. For your personal needs, intrude on no one to make your brothers seem different. Specialness in Asim refers to the ego's tendency to make some relationships special sources of love or hate, projecting needs and expectations onto them.
So dropping the projections.
Exactly. When free from the past, values and judgments projected onto others, the Course says we see our brothers, meaning all other people, as all the same and like yourself, recognizing the underlying shared identity, with no separation between yourself and them. It's a moment of profound, unified perception, a glimpse of true oneness beyond appearances.
These insights collectively suggest that our deepest connections, far from being just sources of emotional fulfillment or potential pain, can actually be incredibly fertile ground for profound personal and collective transformation. It's a total reframe.
It really is.
It challenges us to imagine how societies might fundamentally change if relationships were primarily understood as opportunities for spiritual growth and mutual empowerment, rather than simply being for emotional fulfillment, physical security, or social convention.
What would that look like?
Right. This implies a future where interdependence is embraced, not feared, and where the ego's engine of destruction, as ASEM calls its patterns of separation and attack, is gradually replaced by loving communication, genuine acceptance, and profound conscious connection.
It's truly a radical reimagining of human connection, shifting us from seeing ourselves as fragmented, separate egos often in conflict, towards experiencing a deeper underlying unity.
So with this potentially new understanding of relationships and this expansive view of the self and consciousness, what then is the overarching purpose? What's the point of human existence and spiritual endeavor in this evolving understanding of reality? This brings us to the really grand questions, doesn't it? Meaning purpose and the very evolution of consciousness itself.
Exactly. If we connect all these threads now to the biggest picture, many of these sources suggest a profound shift in understanding human purpose, moving away from, say, passively enduring life's challenges or just trying to get through it, towards actively co-creating reality, moving from seeking external validation or fitting into prescribed roles, toward embodying internal magnificence and spiritual sovereignty. Neil Donald Walsh, for example, states quite radically that life's true purpose is not primarily to learn information or accumulate facts, but to remember, literally, to put the members back together, to recall and reintegrate who and what we fundamentally are at the deepest level.
Remembering our true nature.
Yes, and then he declares, very provocatively, you are creating God.
Okay, creating God. That's a powerful and, let's be honest, almost shocking idea for many, especially those raised with traditional religious concepts of an external, pre-existing, separate deity. So God isn't just something out there, separate from us.
Not in Walsh's framework here. God, or the divine, expresses itself, or himself, in, as, and through you. It's constantly emerging, being created, through our choices, our actions, our state of being. Walsh emphasizes that we are always at choice as to how God will be created now, in this present moment. And he suggests we have an internal guidance system, our feelings, our intuition, to help us discern our highest choice in any situation.
An inner compass.
Right. He asserts, you and I are one, reinforcing that fundamental unity. And perhaps even more profoundly, he claims that the world will follow your idea about yourself, because ultimately, what you think, you create.
Wow. Thoughts create reality.
That's the core principle he presents. It suggests an incredibly active, co-creative role in shaping not just our individual realities, but the collective experience of humanity. He posits that humanity is currently undergoing a momentous paradigm shift in consciousness, moving into a new phase of understanding its own inherent power and divine purpose.
That's an enormous responsibility to even consider embracing the idea that our internal state, our deepest beliefs and intentions, literally shape the world around us. Gary Zukav's The Seat of the Soul also speaks powerfully to the importance of our intentions and the concept of soul evolution, which ties directly into this co-creative process, doesn't it?
It really does complement it well. Zukav explains that our intentions, which he carefully distinguishes from mere surface actions or wishes, are the energetic drivers. They shape the light, or pure energy, consciousness, that flows through us into a reality that is optimal for its growth, for the evolution of its soul.
So intention directs the energy.
Precisely. He also introduces a more nuanced understanding of karma. He defines it not simply as punishment for past deeds, but as the natural consequence created by our reactions to experiences specifically. Those reactions driven by fear, anger, jealousy, judgment, the lower frequencies, rather than by love, compassion, trust.
Reactions create karma, not just actions.
That's his emphasis. Upon returning home, as he described the state between incarnations, our accumulated experiences and crucially our reactions are assessed with the help of teachers and guides. This isn't judgment, he stresses, but a loving review. This assessment reveals new lessons needed and any outstanding karmic imbalances or obligations created by fear-based reactions. And this whole process ultimately leads, cycle after cycle, towards healing, integration, and wholeness for the soul.
It's a long game, then.
A very long game. And this entire process for Zukov is about achieving authentic empowerment, which he defines as the profound alignment of our personality, our everyday self with its fears and desires, with the deeper wisdom, purpose, and unconditional love of our soul.
Okay, so every choice, every reaction, every single intention is actively shaping not just our immediate circumstances, but also our soul's long-term evolutionary journey, moving us gradually towards greater wholeness and alignment. Wow. William James, the pioneering psychologist and philosopher in the varieties of religious experience, offers a slightly different, yet maybe complementary perspective on human purpose. He presents life as a theater for heroism.
A theater for heroism, I like that. He suggests that a certain high-hearted indifference to life, maybe meaning a willingness to embrace challenges without being crushed by fear or even a willingness to risk death for a greater ideal, can consecrate one's life, give it profound meaning.
Finding meaning in courage and commitment.
Yes. Yet James, being a pragmatist and keen observer, also notes that true spiritual or religious phenomena benefit immensely from what he calls the law of the golden mean. He emphasizes the importance of balance, avoiding excess or one-sidedness.
So not getting too extreme.
Exactly. He cautions that spiritual excitement, no matter how profound or genuine it might feel, can actually become pathological, unhealthy, if one's intellect is too narrow, or if other balancing interests and engagements in life are too few. It implies the need for a balanced, integrated approach to spiritual growth, where intensity is tempered with wisdom, reason, critical thinking, and a broad engagement with the fullness of life. It's not just about seeking peak experiences in isolation, but about a holistic way of being.
So it's not just about grand heroic gestures or intense spiritual breakthroughs alone, but also about a grounded, balanced, and integrated way of being in the world day to day. Walsh then returns to this idea that true change is always made at the level of being, not doing.
That distinction again.
Yeah. He argues that we must raise consciousness, shift our fundamental state of being, our core beliefs and assumptions to fundamentally change consciousness, both individually and collectively. We need to move beyond pervasive societal issues like greed replacing common sense or fear dominating political and personal decision-making. This ties directly back to his idea of creating God and shaping reality through embodying our highest ideas, our highest state of being.
And finally, Eckhart Tolle, in The Power of Now, offers a profound perspective on the very purpose and preciousness of life itself, viewed through the lens of mortality. He states quite simply, quite starkly, that death makes life precious.
How so?
He suggests that if life were endless, if there were no finite boundary to our time here in this form, we might very well waste every second of it. There'd be no urgency, no appreciation. It's scarcity, he argues, that often gives value. Think of diamonds or a rare glimpse of a comet.
Right, impermanence gives it meaning.
Exactly. Life, for Tolle, is not something to get something out of or to achieve a specific final outcome from. Rather, it is an experience to be fully engaged with, moment by precious moment, precisely because of its finite nature. It's a powerful reminder to appreciate and live fully in the present moment, recognizing its inherent fleeting value.
These perspectives collectively, then, suggest such a profound shift in understanding human purpose, from passively enduring life and external circumstances, just getting by, to actively co-creating our reality. From seeking external validation or fitting into prescribed roles to embodying internal magnificence and spiritual sovereignty.
A huge shift in perspective.
It really is. The evolution of consciousness is unequivocally presented here as the next great frontier for humanity, a potential collective awakening. And it leaves us with this question: what does it truly mean for society, for your community, for your own daily life, if individuals genuinely begin to embrace the idea that they are, in some sense, creating God through their being, and that the world will follow your idea about yourself?
The implications are staggering.
They are. It radically shifts responsibility for collective well-being away from just external authorities or abstract glimpses and places it squarely on individual inner work and conscious choice. As Walsh so powerfully states it, and it feels like a fitting challenge to leave listeners with, the human race has no chance to lift itself from its own lowest thoughts until you lift yourself to your own highest ideas. Those ideas expressed through you as you create the template, set the stage, serve as a model for the next level of human experience. You are the life and the way. The world will follow you.
Wow.
That really feels like the grand invitation, doesn't it? To consciously step into our roles as co-creators, actively shaping the future of human experience through our own transformation. What an incredible, truly expansive journey we've taken through these wonderfully diverse sources today. My head is spinning a bit, in a good way.
Mine too.
Yeah.
So much to digest.
From Sam Harris's very secular pursuit of mindfulness as a rational response to life's inherent unsatisfactoriness, to the deepest Christian mysticism of St. John of the Cross enduring the dark night, to the disciplined paths of ancient yogic traditions, and then on to modern insights on the nature of consciousness, the power of acceptance, and this idea of co-creation. We've seen incredibly powerful common threads weaving through them all, haven't we? Despite the different languages and starting points.
Definitely.
They consistently point towards an inner world rich with untapped potential, a self far vaster and more connected than we often realize, and a transformative path that fundamentally reshapes not just our inner landscape, but our relationships, our understanding of purpose, and our very place in the cosmos.
Indeed. The sources we've explored today, though so varied in their origins, their traditions, their specific expressions, they consistently extend this profound invitation to look inward, to question our deeply held, often unconscious assumptions about reality, about the nature of self, about connection. They challenge us, really, to move beyond inherited labels, beyond rigid doctrines, beyond even just intellectual concepts, and to instead lean into a direct, lived experience of what feels most true, most essential, and most valuable in our own lives.
So, what does this all truly mean for you personally, listening right now, in your daily life? As you reflect on these powerful insights, the idea of radical acceptance, the expansive nature of consciousness, the heart as a source of unending love, or that maybe challenging notion that you're actively co-creating reality, what resonates most deeply with you? What stands out? And how might your own internal guidance system, that innate sense of knowing Walsh talked about, how might that lead you to explore further? To discover and embody your own unique path, perhaps beyond inherited labels and traditional definitions?
Maybe consider this, just as a final thought to ponder. The radical idea that you are creating God through your conscious choices and intentions, as Walsh puts it. And maybe the related idea drawn from some Advaita teachings that William James touches on, that your deepest self, your true nature, is already inherently pure and perfect. This isn't just a nice philosophical concept to entertain. What new possibilities, what new freedoms, maybe what new responsibilities open up for you if you begin to truly know this on an experiential level, to feel it in your bones rather than just thinking it as an interesting idea.
Knowing versus thinking. Big difference.
Huge difference. Perhaps taking even just a moment for contemplative silence right now after we finish just sitting quietly. Maybe that can allow your own inner wisdom to reveal its own answers, your own next steps.